Hey y'all, thanks for joining me. For the past week, I've been doing a little digging into this whole story background of the Ecumenical Patriarchs, Tomos, and how he legitimized the schismatics and created the OCU. And I've done a lot of videos on this, but I had never really looked into the four churches, the only four churches that had supported the EP regarding this issue of legitimizing and making canonical the OCU and its schismatics group. So, with me here because some very interesting information. I found it quite revealing. First, I'm going to tell you who the four churches are. So I'm going to bring that up. It says the four churches. Now, as you see, the first one, the Ecumenical Patriarch, the Ecumenical Patriarchate. Well, that's pretty much obviously a given because they're the ones that initiated this thing in the first place. The date of recognition was January 5th, 2019. Now you'll see the Patriarchate of Alexandria was November 8th, 2019. The Church of Greece was October 19, 2019. And the Church of Cyprus, October 24th, 2020. These are the four churches that voted in, carried out their votes in agreeing and supporting the EP. Okay? So I'm going to remind you of some information on this. I'm going to remind you about the story I just did a few days back, the Greek Metropolitan on recognition of the OCU. Remember, I did that just a few days ago, and it was Metropolitan Seraphim of Cathera. He had come out and said of the Church of Greece that they never voted. They never voted. The vote did not take place. As he had said, no voting took place, neither open nor secret, neither by show or of hands, nor in any other form. And he had said, this is what happened here. Although quite a few spoke in support of autocephaly, in total about 33 people spoke, but both for and against, while the rest did not speak at all. It was a Saturday. Participants were dispersing. Some had already left. At that time, a press release was being drafted in which everything was presented as though a vote had been held. But is a vote conducted through a press release? They simply wrote everything up and announced it as though the Church of Greece had made a decision. And when he emphasized that, he wanted to do the vote, he said, let's do the vote, but nothing ever happened. Okay? You recall that? Nothing ever happened where they had a total vote and everybody was present and everybody agreed. That just did not happen. So, the Church of Greece, who supposedly date of recognition was October 19, 2019, as we said, was indeed not a recognition. Never was. Now we're going to go into the Patriarchate of Alexandria. What happened during that time? So he decided on November 8th, 2019, that he was recognizing the OCU. However, it was a big surprise because this same Patriarch Theodore II of Alexandria declared that in Ukraine there is only one canonical church, the UOC, and only one canonical primate, His Beatitude Metropolitan Onufri. Yes, he said that. Why did it suddenly change? Well, there's a lot of information in here. And I'm going to also read what the Patriarch Kirill had said at that time, just in case people were wondering or curious. He had said at that time, I will say, perhaps, a somewhat unexpected thing. Why is Papism dangerous? Certainly, because Papism does not follow from either the Word of God or the tradition of the Church. I will still offer another completely different argument. Papism is dangerous in that it is much easier to influence one individual than a group of people, a pope and a patriarch who wants to become the pope become a very attractive target to the powers that be, and an outside influence made on one individual may ruin the Church. When the system of synodal governance of the Church was developed, the holy apostles were well aware of what they were doing. It was impossible in the context of the Roman Empire that only one individual should have borne responsibility for the whole Church. Indeed, he could be arrested, he could be persuaded to cooperate, he could be scared. However, all these dangers come to naught when the Church is governed collegially, synodally. Therefore, in our time too, it is necessary to uphold the synodal governance of the universal Church. We do not challenge the Patriarch of Constantinople's primacy and honor, but we disagree with any encroachments on the universal power. The Patriarch of Constantinople, who resides in the territory of Turkey, is very vulnerable personally, and for this reason it remains for us only to pray that the Lord may save him from influences that could have pernicious effect on the life of the whole Church. And wasn't he right? Even the author of this article said, Patriarch of Russia and Orthodox Church is completely right. Without collegiality, the Church is only a tool for solving one-time problems. The emergence and recognition of OCU is an excellent illustration of this. Now, he gets into a couple things here. A church schism in Ukraine was created in the early 1990s with the help of state power in the person of the former functionary of the Communist Party. Later, the first president of Ukraine, and the anathematized Metropolitan Philaret. Yes, all of these have to do with this. And you know about the background. Same applies for the OCU and the president, and like we said. And the same Philaret created a new church. Remember that. Remember that the State Department and all that was involved in this. So we already know somewhat of that background, that was going on. So we understand what Patriarch Kirill had said in response to this decision of the EP. I'm sharing that because some people might not have known exactly what was said. And I didn't know, so I'm sharing that with you. The next thing we're going to go to is, again, what's going on, what was going on with the Patriarch of Alexandria, Theodore II. As we see, these factors were included: State Department, Ethnophyletism, and loss of faith. See what he said. After breaking the Eucharistic communion with Patriarch Bartholomew of Constantinople, the first primate in the diptych, whom the Patriarch of Moscow read at every service, was the name of His Holiness Patriarch Theodore. His personal stance in relation to the Ukrainian schismatics until yesterday was irreconcilable. So even during the Crete Council, which was a farce, but at which the primates unofficially discussed the recognition of the then UOCKP, Patriarch Theodore clearly and unequivocally expressed his support for his Beatitude Metropolitan Onufry of Kiev. Let him know that the Patriarchate of Alexandria and we all side with the canonical Ukrainian Orthodox Church under the leadership of his Beatitude Metropolitan Onufry. And he repeated this, the same thing, during his visit to Odessa in October 2018. We are together with those who want the Orthodox unity, stay faithful to the canonical Church. This is interesting. It says in June 2019, I believe that a solution can be found. Just let each of us leave our personal interests aside and see first the foremost interest, the interest of the Church. I lived in Ukraine. I experienced the pain and schism of the Ukrainian Church, but I also know the Russian Church very well because I lived in its bowels for 10 years, and the Patriarchate of Alexandria has emotional ties with it. Interesting. Emotional ties. So they mention other people that got pressured. There's a lot of pressure going on. So what you learned from this article was he moved this in this way because of pressure. And why do I say that? Because he also said those that actually voted in the Patriarchate of Alexandria did that for respect of Constantinople. That was like their main thing they said. Now, what we know about the what happened in Alexandria is around the same thing. What happened in the Church of Greece. The Patriarchate of Alexandria was, his relationship with the EP, that influenced it, the respect and all that stuff that I talked about. Traditionally, the Patriarch of Alexandria has aligned with the Ecumenical Patriarch, historically, apparently, traditionally, on matters of governance and authority. This long-standing relationship contributed to their decision, right? So the Synod of Alexandria convened to discuss that OCU the situation. So they did convene. However, stating that it supported the EP's decision, but did not necessarily detail a vote on the matter. Their affirmation was seen as a consensus among the bishops, though specific votes may not have been publicly documented. It's widely acknowledged that there was considerable pressure from the EP for other churches, including Alexandria, to affirm those, as you just saw in that article. Again, no formal vote was done. This did not help this caused strain with other Orthodox churches, of course, when Patriarch Theodore II did this. There was never a vote, and there was the importance of, through tradition of, let's support the EP. Also, in some of my older past videos, I showed that the articles I brought up said that the Patriarch himself, Patriarch Bartholomew himself, along with all these other churches, recognized that he agreed with the Moscow Patriarchates and the Moscow Patriarchs expelling of these groups of men who had been defrocked for valid reasons. Some were never clergy, and Philaret was eventually excommunicated. And what I'm saying is the Fanner was fine with this when this initially happened. He agreed that they were all schismatics, and the other churches did as well. So this changed because of pressures outside of these churches, right? And political, whatever. So let's just summarize what we have here. We have the first church to recognize this and vote was the Ecumenical Patriarchate, because they're the ones that brought it forth and set that up. Then we had the Patriarch of Alexandria. We now know what happened there. No real vote. There wasn't a total consensus. Most of the bishops agreed, but there wasn't a total consensus. Was no vote, and they had to be respectful to the EP. The Church of Greece never had a vote, and there were people there were bishops and that were absent. There were people for and against it, a lot of people for it, some against it. Never was voted at all, according to Metropolitan Seraphim of Cathera. Now we're going to go on to the last church, the Church of Cyprus. Well, let's see what they said. Synod of the Orthodox Church of Cyprus does not recognize the new Orthodox Church of Ukraine. That was in February 22nd, 2019. On 18 February 2019, the Holy Synod of the Orthodox Church of Cyprus had an extraordinary session under the chairmanship of His Beatitude Archbishop Chrysostomos of New Justinia and Justiniana and all Cyprus to discuss the situation surrounding the church life in Ukraine. Having expressed an opinion that the actions of the Patriarchate of Constantinople and Ukraine had been aimed at pacifying and achieving the unity of the local church, the Synod members stated that this goal has not been achieved at present. In the event that the unification of the Ukrainian Orthodoxy will not recur, the Church of Cyprus expects the convocation of a Pan-Orthodox council or a synexis of primates. Why is this important? Because as I did another video on this, there were others recently in the past few months, like the Metropolitan of Piraeus, that's another seraphim name, and that's his name. And then there was the Orthodox Church of Poland that called for a Pan-Orthodox as well council in the last month or so. And then you have the one in Jerusalem. The Jerusalem bishop asked for that as well. And here they're talking about it back in 2019. Oh, we should do it. If they can't agree, we should do a Pan-Orthodox council. Now, why did they say this? Well, of course, they understood every nation which received national independence has a right to request church autocephaly. Okay. The Holy Synod noted that an agreement concerning the way to grant autocephaly has been reached earlier within the preparations for the fifth pre-council conference, but had been annulled in view of impossibility to agree upon the means to sign a Tomos for autocephaly. Well, why was that? If it were not for this circumstance, there would have been no current problem in Ukraine. So what is the thing? What happened? Well, it says right here. Having raised an issue of apostolic succession of the newly created structure in Ukraine, recognized by the Patriarchate of Constantinople, the Holy Synod of the Church of Cyprus emphasized that the 2,000 years old experience of the Church of Cyprus, as well as the whole Orthodox Church, arouses doubts about a possibility to legitimize post-factum the ordinations performed by the defrocked, excommunicated, and anathematized bishops. He says, we Orthodox all agreed. See the importance here. We Orthodox all agreed with the defrocking, excommunicating, and anathematizing of some persons who had become instigators of the Ukrainian crisis. The right of appeal when such takes place must have time limits with regard to its submission and consideration. The Synod members noted. The bishops of the Church of Cyprus pointed out that even if the Ukrainian Orthodox faithful unite around a new structure, the Patriarchate of Constantinople has to find a way to soothe the conscience of the believers as to validity of the ordinations and sacraments that are being performed by this structure. So again, there's the issue with the schismatic, how that was working, what they were trying to do. So, with all this information I just gave you, what's the conclusion? The conclusion is these four churches, the EP, the Church of Alexandria, the Patriarchate of Alexandria, the Church of Greece, the Church of Cyprus. It is obvious through this that the EP stood alone. Their pressuring didn't really work that great. They couldn't pressure the other churches, so they tried to pressure the more Greek churches or those that are close to the close to the EP, which was the Patriarchate of Alexandria. Those were the only ones that he tried to persuade. The thing is, no formal votes were done. No total agreement was made with between any of these bishops in any of these churches. So, this just tells you there's no support for this. Yes, I'm talking officially. Yes, there's some bishops that support and all that, but it's not been an official vote. This whole thing. It really mirrors the Great and Holy Council of Crete in 2016, which was a farce. Many of the primates there, I think only 10 out of 100 voted. They didn't do anything the correct protocol for that at all. They were like, oh, okay, well, he'll speak for the rest of the bishops in this church, this local church. Just have him sign it. Which is not how it works for these type of Pan-Orthodox councils. Everybody has to be present. Everybody has to vote. And that didn't happen there. It was crazy. It was a fiasco. So it sounds like the same thing happened here. So, zero support for the EP when it comes to officially voting on this issue of legitimizing the schismatics and creating this OCU church. Simple as that. Well, thanks so much for watching. I hope this was informative to you. I hope you got a lot out of it. And please, if you'd like, you can share my videos, any of my videos that you enjoy. Please share them. Get them out there if you like. If you haven't subscribed, please consider subscribing to my channel. Like my videos if you think they're worth liking. It's good for the algorithms. If you want to support me even further, you can hit the super thanks button below this video. It should be in the panel there. If it's not, it's the dots. You hit that and it should be in there. Or you can buy me a cup of coffee, the link is in the description. Thanks so much for watching, as I said.